for joining me this morning. I'm really excited to be here today and just sharing this information with you. I know how critical it is to actually have the right people in your business, especially for a small and medium business. The impact of a bad hire is obviously just that much worse. So I suppose I hope you realise just how important the information we're going to cover today is. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put up a slide presentation, run through that with you, and then right at the very end I'll come back on again. Well, I'll be here anyway naturally because I'm talking, and then you'll see me again and we'll go through a Q&A at the end. But firstly, can I ask, if you're in a business environment, this will be fine, but if you're at home and you're sharing Wi-Fi with any other devices, may I suggest that you turn off those devices and just get the best kind of webinar experience that you can. Also, on the right of your screen, you will see a chat room. My moderator will shortly put up a link to the worksheet. If you have not yet downloaded that, that's just a nice quick way to get it. So let's move over to the webinar. Okay, so the process that we're going to run through today, it will help you make better hiring decisions and hire people that make a massive contribution to your business. This is more critical than ever, with larger companies having access to marketing dollars, candidate attraction methods, they've got more resources, and they also have access to often newer technologies. So small businesses really need to get smarter to compete. And the quality of people is your differentiator. It's time to get it right. Today, you will walk away with a good understanding of how to assess fit for your business. And if you stay till the end, I'm going to give you a right fit checklist to support your recruitment efforts. And as I've said, there'll be a Q&A at the end. I will also, at the end, just go through next steps. If you kind of want to know where you can possibly take this. So the content being covered today, I'm going to go through why companies hire the wrong people. How does it actually happen? Why right fit is important, and what do I actually mean by right fit? I'm going to talk about identifying your business values and culture, because that forms the basis of right fit, and the process that you embed into your recruitment to help identify right fit. I'm going to go through some useful hiring tools, and the process we're going to talk about is what I call a high touch process versus an automated process. And I suppose what I mean by that is that there are various kind of software on the market that run all sorts of algorithms that, will tell you whether someone's, a good fit or not. The reality is the ones I've seen so far, they either don't have much science behind them, or they're set up for the American market, and ironically there's a cultural fit mismatch there, so they're not as effective as they could be for our market. So we kind of follow a high touch process. Certainly my own clients are small and medium, they don't have the money for those sorts of things, so that's why we go down the high touch direction. So first of all, I just wanted to give you a bit of an idea about my background. I got into recruitment in 2000, and I spent 2 years in agencies without a scrap of recruitment related training, which I'm sad to say is actually pretty common in agencies. So without that training, I was still very much focused on skills over fit. But firstly, there were several experiences that led me to concentrate on right fit. In one agency I was in, I remember a colleague placing a person at Vodafone, and with my background in telecommunications, I couldn't believe she had placed this person there. To me, she was so obviously not a fit, and that played out as expected, and the new hire lasted less than 3 months. I knew there was a missing piece of the puzzle, so I kind of embarked on kind of some self sort of education. And at the time, there was some industry recruitment certification, so I did it. And later found out there were only 2 of us in the entire country doing that training at that time, which was also kind of representative and indicative of the industry at that time. Still, I found the training superficial. It didn't cover right fit. And luckily, moving to a large multinational outsourced call centre, I received very specific training, which was considered world's best practice at the time, on matching people with the job, with the company, and the values, and more importantly, motivational fit. So that role was an in-house role, and we were having problems with our turnover, and we were trying to stem this. I started in New Zealand, and then I moved into an international role with the company. And I saw we pretty much had the same problem pretty much everywhere we went. The trouble was, as an outsourcer, our pay rates were below market rates. So we needed a stronger identification process to choose the right people. So we introduced interviewing that included job and cultural fit, alongside the regular behavioural interviewing, and we cut our attrition in half. So back in New Zealand, you know, a few years down the track, I was the recruitment manager at Telecom, and I incorporated the same techniques, and again I was able to stem people leaving. Our outbound sales team that we recruited for reported that hires were selling more. Our retail stores saw better performance from newly hired staff. So there was a definite difference. And meanwhile, along the way, I just kept on bumping into small business owners who had made some bad hires. They didn't have the budget for agencies. They were doing DIY recruitment, often with dire results. And I suppose that's when it occurred to me that the result for them was just so much more impactful than it would have been for a larger business. So for the last 5 years, I've been helping small and medium businesses use these techniques with my clients, and they've been quite astonished by the difference in the calibre and the fit of the people found. In saying that, making an offer is ultimately your decision, and a lot of people, they kind of put too much emphasis on an agency and saying, oh, you say the fine, look, I don't know what I'm doing, so okay, I'll take them. And often there's a big fee around that, so it's a very kind of biased, you know, view that you're potentially getting. So you really need to understand right fit yourself and kind of have that sort of final responsibility. So I'm going to be taking you through tips and tricks on finding right fit. But all you need to know right now is it's very possible to find good people for your business, both affordably and without that much energy. So I just want to ask you a poll question. First of all, if you look to the right of your screen in the chat room there, in the polls, there is a question there. And I would like to ask you, who on the call today has made a bad hire? If you can just answer yes or no. I'm not sure if everyone has answered that yet, but it's looking pretty chronic. Oh yes, someone else just answered. We've just got a few more answers coming in here. It started off at 100% had made a bad hire, so that was looking pretty scary. Currently sitting at 82% of people have made a bad hire, and that's not out of the ordinary. Sadly, it's pretty easy to do, and that will align very well with some statistics that I'll give you a little bit later on. So the result there is 82% of people have made a bad hire and 18% haven't, which is great. Okay, so Talent Seed was born out of frustration of these people, you know, kind of seeing people leave at speed, and seeing small and medium businesses struggle with little budget, resources, expertise, or confidence to recruit. And small businesses are the backbone of our society. We've, 90% of, I think, businesses in New Zealand are small. So it's just really important that we're strong and do it right. And so it's our aim to educate businesses and upskill them to make better hiring decisions. But let's look at why bad hiring happens. You can see there one of the top things is flawed decisions. And there are kind of 4 main reasons that this happens. Firstly, it's really common for managers to focus on skills and experience. And what tends to happen is they then miss out on behaviours and motivations. So what they're really looking at when they do this, it's they're looking at whether someone can do the job versus someone will do the job and do it well, do it happily, and not be destructive along the way. So that's one thing. Next thing is we're all human, so we can rely on our first impression quite a lot. Now, the trouble with first impression is that we often just decide whether we like someone, and I've had a lot of people say to me, they'll hire based on whether they see themselves having a drink with the candidate. And really you're going down the friendship line there. You're not going, there is no basis of that, of how well they could actually do the job. So again, that is a motive, and there's no proof there at all as to whether they'll be capable in the role. People also assume prior experience means they can do the job well. And I imagine some of you sitting there going, well, doesn't it, if someone has the experience? I'll give you a classic example. Managers. We have quite a poor record in New Zealand of kind of upskilling people into management positions. And often people end up in a management position, the next best person, and they get thrown in the deep end. They carry out their management position to all sorts of varying degrees of success, and next person that looks at their CV goes, great, they've been in management for 2 years, we'll put them straight into a leadership role. And they forget to measure whether they were actually doing that role well. And sometimes people end up in jobs, and the whole reason they're actually coming to you for a job is they didn't do very well at that job and it's a mismatch. So you've really got to not assume that that means they can do the job well. Another thing is there's not enough exposure to candidates before the decision, and this goes back to that high touch process again. The more little times that you have contact with the candidate during the process, I suppose the more times they have to slip up, really. So why is right fit important? And these are some statistics around it. Employees that have the right fit are more productive, more engaged, more profitable, and stay longer. Some statistics from a company called Round Peg, who do cultural recruitment in the US, they say people come up to speed in their job 15% faster. They're 35% more profitable. They are 17% less likely to turn over, and 89% of an employee's success is to do with their cultural fit. So as mentioned, when I was international recruitment manager for a large international outsourced call centre, we cut turnover in half by introducing cultural fit questions into our process. And what manager wants to go through training all over again unnecessarily, or worse, performance manage someone? So companies that invest in their culture and have staff aligned are 6 times more successful than their competitors. Just another statistic. And another one from a company called Leadership IQ. They've said, just using standard kind of recruitment methods, that only 19% 90% success rate, which means only 1 out of 5 people out of that process have been classified as an unequivocal success. So that's pretty scary when you look at 81% are either just doing the job or actually even potentially not doing it that well. So what is right fit? We break right fit down into 2 quite distinct areas. One is job fit and one is cultural fit. I'll go into job fit first of all. Most hiring managers will be very used to skills because that's pretty much what most people kind of concentrate on. Outside of that, there is also the motivation towards the job, and then there is alignment with certain factors in the job based on their expectations. And these factors will be things like advancement opportunities. Now, I'm not saying every job has to have an advancement opportunity because some people aren't looking for that. But if they are really looking to advance and there are absolutely no opportunities for them to do so, they will not actually stay that long. Same with if they're really seeking work-life balance, and that means different things to different people. If someone's quite happy to work 50 hours a week, they might actually consider they've got work-life balance. But there just has to be that sort of alignment with their own kind of commitments and what they're wanting to do. If someone's really wanting to contribute to society and your company is doing something that's potentially harmful, you start getting a real mismatch there. Again, people will leave. Salary expectations, you'd think this is a bit obvious, but what tends to happen is sometimes if people have been out of work for a while, they'll take a bit of a salary drop and they'll say, oh, no, I'm just, that's fine, I'll take that. And then the old hygiene factors kind of kick in again when someone's been in the role for, 6 months, and next minute they're dissatisfied and start looking at what they used to earn. So that can kind of hit you later on. Manageable commute, same thing. If someone's travelling an hour to work every day, unless they are absolutely passionate about your company and what you're doing, that's going to be short-lived. Location is another one. It doesn't quite line up with the commute. Location is things like if you're at an industrial park and someone's really looking for, cafes and shopping at lunchtime and parks around and stuff, then there may not be an alignment. The other thing is cultural fit, and cultural fit covers 3 distinct areas of the company itself, the team, and the values within the company. Company can mean size. So if you've got someone that has only worked in a very large business and you're a small or medium business, they may struggle with that transition, and vice versa. Now, again, that's not to say they will struggle. It's just to say you need to be aware of it, and you need to dig into that further, and they need to have thought about the differences that they are going to find before they actually start. Also, the structure of the company, hierarchy, whether it's a flat structure or a hierarchical structure, because sometimes people struggle in one or the other. And formality, just things like open door policies, Friday casual, that sort of thing, or whether you're casual every day of the week. Team is another thing, in that the general attitude of the team, if you put someone into a team and they're incredibly customer focused and everyone else in the team is pretty kind of lackadaisical, or you've got people that have got, a bit of a real bad attitude, unless they have been pre-warned, if they start thinking that is acceptable, they start, losing real motivation themselves. The manager's really important, but this is a really awkward one, right? Because you could hire someone and 2 months down the track, manager changes. Now, if you're a small and medium business, you're going to be around for a while. So therefore you can put some real emphasis on this and whether you gel with a person or not, or whether you have the same sort of vision and way of working. But if you're a business that there is constant restructures, you can't put so much emphasis around it, because you get a team working really, really well, and then, the manager's gone. The next thing is values, and we will go into this in more depth. And values is basically the kind of accepted norms and behaviours that are within the business, and the personality of a company, because companies they get a personality. So we will go into that in more detail, because to really recruit on values and culture, you need to understand what your values and culture are. I'm going to go through this in not a lot of depth, because this is a massive topic, all on its own. But first of all, you need to see what the CEO or founder thinks the company stands for. You need to then ask staff, what do we stand for? And focus groups might be a way to do it, where you would not have the CEO or founder present, so that you kind of get open, honest conversation. And then you need to get alignment, a staff and management on the same page. Are you all kind of heading in the same direction and agree that the values and culture are the same? Now, if you do have values already, you need to review them and ask, do staff act in accordance to these values? If you don't have values, you need to start looking at developing them, but you need to get staff involved, so there is agreement and you have buy-in to those values. You also need to translate values into behaviours. So this is the real step between making something really intangible and just floating around in the background, where this is what our values and culture look like, to actually really nailing it down so it becomes something solid you can hang your decisions on. So we ask, what would you see if staff were actually living those values? And this is just an example of one of my clients. One of their values is uncompromising excellence. And so what we've done is we've put a definition around that. What does uncompromising excellence look like in their business? And it means that they strive to produce workmanship and provide service of high quality to customers, that people take pride in their work, they have an eye for detail, and they complete jobs to a high standard. And they are driven to deliver over and above expectations. So you'll see below that we have then defined what is below standard, what behaviours below standard, what behaviours meet standard, and what behaviours exceed standard. And you would measure people's interview responses against these. So even if you had kind of different interviewers, you would have that sort of consistency and kind of calibration across, that everyone's on the same page. That's what you need to meet, the standard. So the process to identify fit that I'm going to go through, and as recruitment people, we often break the recruitment process into what we call screening and what we call selection. Screening is once you've already done the advertising, and at this stage you're screening people out. So you're basically coming down to a long list. And when we move to selection, at that stage you're more screening people in. But screening, the two things, the tools that are available to you are obviously the CV. And we talked before about size of companies or similar companies or industries. They're the sort of clues you will see on a CV that align with fit. The other thing that should be big clues to you are tenure and gaps. And obviously tenure and gaps show people's reasons for leaving. And reason for leaving is a massive clue is into someone's motivation, because the fact that people up and leave a job is for some sort of dissatisfaction. So you don't want to give them a job where that exact thing is actually also represented in your environment. So you have these clues already from the CV, you get on the phone and do a phone screen. And the sort of things you would cover, salary expectations, we talked about a bit, the commute, what motivates them at work. Now, you can really start digging into some questions at this stage. And some questions you may ask is, when have you been happiest at work? And, why did that make you happy? And you can say, and on the flip side of that, when have you been dissatisfied at work? And what was so dissatisfying about that for you? And then you can use their answers to align to what is actually in your process. And there is a technique you can hear. Actually, I'll go into it more in the selection. But again, you need to find out on the phone screen their reasons for leaving. So then you go on to selection. At this stage, you already kind of have a long list, and you're really just now trying to cut it down to a short list. So generally the first step is the interview, and most people already are doing behavioural questions, which are what we call the STAR technique. Looking for the situation, the task, the action the person took, and the result. And then you take that, already do those skills, which will uncover your skills and kind of your values. But then you slot onto that motivational fit. And you actually almost have to stop the interview and go, great, we've already now looked at the skills you've got. We're now going to look at what makes you tick. And you change the tone of the interview, and you're then able to get a different sort of information. There are two different approaches to this. Searching for motivational fit, you often get people to open up when you're a lot more informal, and they are a lot more sharing. The trouble is you've got to be careful that you don't ask personal questions about their home or family life, because then you start getting into discriminatory sort of areas. So another technique you can use is the what, when, why technique. And that's, what aspect of your roles have you really enjoyed? And when have you been happiest at work? And, so why was that important to you? And the why that is that important to you is really important, because if you said to someone, what have you not enjoyed doing? And someone says admin, you're not going to, you can't assume that person hates admin for the same reason you do. So it really kind of digs down to another level. And now, contrasting opposites, I'll give you an example of that. Example might be, tell me about a time when you worked for a company that had either very firm processes to follow or complete scope to decide the approach for yourself. What did you like or dislike about this? Now, there are two right answers here. If you're looking for someone that is self-managing and they'll just decide the best approach for themselves, the best answer is that they worked in a company that had very firm processes and they didn't like it, or they worked in a company where it was quite loose and they managed really well. The reason that you use contrasting opposites format is you have not told them what the environment is like in your business. And you can use this with almost anything. You can use it with, tell me about a company where it's very hierarchical that you've worked in, or that's much flatter structure. You just take two opposing opposites and you don't tell them about your environment beforehand. And then you'll get some real clues. Right through the interview, you should be observing, and words like, I love this, I like that, oh yeah, I really hated that. And they, again, are clues towards someone's motivation. Another thing is the reference check. Now, others' observations of what motivates them is clearly quite valuable, especially in New Zealand, where referees are protected by the Privacy Act, and they can actually protect any of the content of the reference, never have it ever go to the candidate. So people tend to be really quite open and tell us quite a lot. So strengths and weaknesses is important because generally people are not motivated to do something that they're not great at. And, you know, the flip side of that is naturally the more motivated to do things they are good at. You can ask things like, you know, the legacy they left behind, and that may be questions like, what are they remembered for? And the quality of their relationships, and you start getting a really good feel. I've actually had reference checks that have completely and utterly turned my opinion round on candidates, and not just for the bad, not just for someone that you thought was quite good and then the reference put you off, but also we've undecided about a couple of candidates, and you know they're possibly a little bit average, and do a reference check on them and someone just raves about them, and all of a sudden you've actually got a superstar on your hands, which is always nice. Psychometrics, a lot of small and medium businesses, they often just don't do this, but it's nice to know that it's there. They can give some extra clues into someone's personality, how they like working, and if you've done any profiling around your team, they can give you a really good insight into whether someone is going to fit in your team. There's a good New Zealand one out there that's only about, I think it's about $195, so it's actually not too expensive through the Selector group. So useful tools. So there are little aspects right through the recruitment process. One, the first thing is candidate-centric ad. And what do I mean by candidate-centric ad? Is one that spells out for the candidate what is in it for them, and it's not a shopping list of what you want to, of what you're looking for. And this type of ad will actually encourage the right people to apply, and it actually tells people, it will spell out the values and behaviours, it will say why, how they're actually going to use that value, and it will actually put people off that go, oh yeah, I can't pretend you know, that I have that. Automation, there's, you know, in the old days, it was large companies that could have what we call candidate management systems or applicant tracking systems. These days, you can automate applications really, really easily, which means that you can respond to candidates much, much more easily, and it's just much easier to assess and record, you know, who actually suits your roles. I mean, there's literally systems out there now that you buy it. You use them on a per-use basis because they're cloud-based. So a lot of them are free for this first time, and then they're only about $80 or $90 each time you recruit. So they're really, really affordable. And then you build into those systems some culling questions, and as well as having the standard, you know, have you got any health issues that could impact your ability to carry out the job, and, you know, do you have a criminal history or anything? You can actually put some questions in there that relate to your culture and the values of the organisation as well. So you can already get a real sense of whether someone fits before you're even starting to open their CVs. The next step is just some of those systems if you want to look into them. There's haystack.jobs, and another one in the New Zealand market is weirdlyhub.com. The other thing is having standardised process and supporting documentation, and that's just interview guides and things, and having that, you know, and consistent process across everyone. Now, behavioural interviews we talked about before, they provide proof of experience and effectiveness by looking at what people have done, not what they would do. So doing everything in past tense. Then you turn the values-based questions into behavioural questions, and then you assess them against norms and practices within the business. And something I'll talk to you about a little bit later is a right fit toolkit, which is a toolkit for your specific role that has pretty much all of the above within that toolkit. So I am assuming that you turned up today because you wanted to find out how to not hire the wrong people, why right fit was important, what is right fit and how you could identify this for your business, the process, the useful hiring tools that will support you, and how you can, someone has also asked for how you can identify emotional intelligence. So I'll just kind of cover that off very quickly. Emotional intelligence, and it's something that is a behaviour at the end of the day. So you just define it. You say, what does emotional intelligence actually look like? And let's see, I'll come up a little bit about that further on. But yeah, if someone's been emotionally intelligent, they recognise stress in others, they recognise others' moods or how they are, and they're able to respond accordingly. So you just take all of that and you define it. It becomes a behaviour, and then as soon as you have a behaviour, you can put interview questions around that. Same with, I also have a client that says they always hire T-shaped people. What does a T-shaped person mean? It means someone that is easily able to get to grips with the breadth of business complexity, as well as always also have a specialty and depth in one kind of area of expertise. So if someone had that breadth, what behaviours would you see? And you might see a lot of collaboration and teamwork. So again, you can easily build interview questions around that. So in addition today, I hope you've also had some other takeaways of how right fit people will support and grow your business, how a high touch holistic approach incorporating job, company, team, manager and cultural fit will have people come up to speed faster, and they'll be more profitable and they'll stay longer. And how having a formalised, consistent process and tools can help you identify right fit. And that means that if you've got multiple interviewers, you're going to get that kind of consistency, or you're just not going to skip something with someone either. The obvious question you probably have right now is, what will it take for me to move forward and to get the tools to hire the right people? And I need to be upfront. I'm going to talk to you about the Right Fit Toolkit, and it's something you wouldn't even look at if you are looking for a purple squirrel. And what I mean by that is you occasionally get companies that want everything all in one role, and potentially that person may not exist. If you expect people to kind of drop into your lap without the sourcing strategy on the beginning of it, of, where should those ads be placed? Where is your audience kind of hanging out? So screening and selection and attraction strategies. And if you're in the habit of kind of taking shortcuts, then obviously a toolkit that gives you a process probably isn't for you. And if you tend to just let one criteria completely outweigh the other, and you turn a blind eye to a glaringly obvious gap that someone has, then probably not the best thing for you either. But what I want to talk to you about is the Right Fit Toolkit. The Right Fit Toolkit is basically just a recruitment hiring pack, and it is either customised very much for a specific role, right through from having a candidate-centric ad, the culling questions that you would ask around that, and the automation of those through a little applicant tracking system, a process map of exactly what you need to consider, what to do and when, and then the hiring templates you would use along the way for DIY type hiring. Even if you were using an agency, you could use these, because you still need to have your own interview guide and potentially even carry out your own references. There's also a standardised form, and that is for roles, really common roles like admin and PA and sales, hospitality, retail roles where they can be pretty much the same across either industries or just, admin people. A lot of the same behaviours you look at regardless of industry. So we also have a standardised version of those. So this week we're selling the customised toolkit with the ad included. That price is normally $1,647. This week we've got a 10% discount at $1,482. The customised toolkit without the ad automation or the interview guide and reference checking form, they're all still very, very tailored to your role. That's normally $1,155. This week it's $1,039. The standardised toolkit, and that is for the roles below. We've got the admin one and the retail one ready to go, and I can have the other 3 ready by the end of the week. Just putting the finishing touches on them. And they're for common roles that if you've got a retail operation and you're constantly hiring retail people, this is a really good way to have that solid process, for every recruit that you do. So this is what they look like. You literally get a process map, and as you can see, it's a 1-pager, nice and simple. Each stage tells you what you should be doing and when. You'd get a phone screening template. This is just 1 page of a 2-page document, but it asks you what you should be, asking. And on the back, there is a specific question around assessing fit, where you have to answer yes, no, or kind of maybe as to whether they're an attrition risk or not. And so it makes you think hard about that before you kind of proceed any further. This is just one section of the interview guide where it spells out the definition of a particular competency, and then gives questions for both experienced and inexperienced candidates, because you'd use a slightly different approach. Again, this is just a reference check. It's very, very in-depth. It's actually about 3 pages. And we also spell out the competencies, what are you looking for? Because your competencies become your target in recruiting. And it's pretty hard to know what you've found unless you know what you're seeking to start with. How do you know when you found it if you didn't know what you were seeking? We don't have any e-commerce enablement. So if you see that is of any use to you, please just contact us. Our website is also just talentseed.co.nz, but you can either contact me by email, mobile or phone. We help out with DIY recruitment through giving people, writing ads, just giving them toolkits to do it themselves, supported recruitment. That could be mentored, helping a small business through it, so it's quite customised and piecemeal, or completely outsourced. Consulting, we help out with recruitment audits and strategies around recruitment and developing processes across their entire kind of company for their recruitment, and also training. And we run workshops to train people in interview skills, and I also just do one-on-one coaching with people by sitting in on interviews with them. But I am going to move on to the Q&A. I did receive a couple of questions beforehand. So first of all, I've just put the emotional intelligence one up there, and I kind of touched on that before. And this is just an example of someone said, how would you define something like emotional intelligence in an interview? Well, you would define what that is. It is to recognise, understand and manage our own emotions. It is to recognise others' emotions. It's to use emotional information to guide our thinking and behaviour. So what would that actually look like in the workplace? Well, that might look like that they would pick up feelings of others, they would interact well, they would build relationships, and they would respond appropriately. So then you would build, once you know what that looks like, you could build an interview question around it. So an interview question would be seeking proof. So you'd be looking for a past time they've done that. So a question would be, tell me about a time when you've had to approach a colleague carefully or choose your words wisely. What was the situation and what did you say? And then, you know, the process as well is you would be gathering proof through the process, through both their responses to those interview questions and through references and others' observations of them. Another question that we did have was where to advertise, and kind of this particular subject matter wasn't really about that today, but really ask yourself, where does your audience hang out? Because you need to find out where they're looking. Like, you know, where an IT geek is looking is going to be completely different from, you know, a tradesperson, you know. So you need to work out kind of where they hang out. You need to have really clear differentiators as an employer, and you need to know clearly why someone would work here, being your company, rather than a competitor or another company. So I am just going to come back and look at any Q&A. Someone has just asked if I'll be sending out the slides. Yes, I think I can do that, Chrissy. Thank you so much for joining me today. If there is nothing else that has popped up, as I've said, you can get hold of me at tania@talentseed.co.nz or call me on 3660223 and we can talk to you about helping you build a process for either a very, very specific role within your company or an entire recruitment process for your company. And thanks so much for joining me, and I hope you got some value out of today. Goodbye.